What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? It's your buddy Big Johnny G for Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. Midday Monologue Mondays with us again, my friends. How's everyone doing? Good to see you, or, well, at least good to be seen. So on Mondays I like to talk. I talk about things that catch my attention when it comes to board games and tabletop adventures and, items of interest like that. We do a video every day of the week, so please come on by and support us. As far as I know, we are YouTube's only for fun channel. No sponsors, no nobody, just us. No money, no monetization. Just doing it because we love it. So now, today I want to talk about two things that I also love, besides filming, right? So the two things that have always been so strongly associated with me, anybody that knows me, anyone who has known me for any amount of time, especially those that have known me most, if not all of my life, there are two things that they can very easily identify with me, and that's my love of Dungeons and Dragons and comic books. So, what happens when the two come together? Because they have before. Did you know that? Alright, why don't we get down to the table, my friends, and I will tell you what I think and what I know about Avengers, Dungeons and Dragons. Come on, I'll see you down there. Avengers and Dungeons and Dragons. No, it has never been an official Dungeons and Dragons, Marvel Comics, Avengers type of crossover. I'm kind of jumping the gun there a little bit. But there has been crossovers with Marvel and fantasy that I know I've enjoyed over the years. I mean, there was the old school first run volume of What If that had What If Conan Walked the Earth Today, which was pretty groundbreaking, I think, for the What If series, taking someone that Marvel only kind of partially owned the rights to do this particular thing with, the comic book adaptation, and taking that and through a What If, putting it in their universe. I mean, yes, Marvel did publish Conan comic books at the time, but it was all set in the Robert E. Howard universe, or at least their version of REH's universe. This was the first time that anyone, as far as I know, took Conan out of the REH and put him somewhere else. And I had a load of fun reading that comic. And it didn't end. They used Conan a bunch of times. Conan's crossed over with Wolverine. He's crossed over with the Avengers in their, the Avengers Tomorrow line or Forever line or something like that back in the early 2000s. That big time adventure that they all... I got it here. Hold on. Now, the Avengers Forever. He was in that. It's crossed over before, but what really sticks out to me has nothing to do with our main man Conan. Really, what means something to me as far as mixing the concepts of Dungeons and Dragons along with Marvel, specifically the Avengers, comes from a 2000 comic book limited series called Avatars of the Shield. And in this, they took regular standing Marvel superheroes that you're familiar with, Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Hulk. They took all of them and put them in their own version of Dungeons and Dragons, for lack of a better term, a fantasy setting, a high fantasy setting like D&D is. And I just ate that up. I wish that was a regular What If universe sort of comic line that they did, but unfortunately it was just a limited series. The X-Men, back in their first volume run, 180 to 191, or 189 to 191, they did this storyline where Earth itself or New York City was changed into this, very Robert E. Howard kind of world. And, that's bringing in the fantasy elements also right into Marvel. And I don't mean fantasy elements, like, hey, we have Doctor Strange, he casts spells and has interdimensional monstrosities torn right out of Lovecraft. No, I mean actual, real fantasy trope kind of stuff. So this has been going on for a while. We had this set up already. There's a precedence for all of this. And then in the early 2000s, Marvel did it again, the Avengers storyline with Morgan Le Fay storyline they did, where she transformed the entire world into her own D&D setting, and she was practically the dungeon master of it. They didn't use that terminology, but you get the idea. You know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. You can sense exactly what I'm talking about. So it has occurred before, and it's worked. It really is just, a fantasy setting is what? It's chainmail and leather. And the superhero genre is spandex and leather. But yeah, sword and sorcery is a term. It's a term a lot of people are familiar with, but there's other terms too that aren't really in use right now because the genres have fallen apart, so to speak. Besides sword and sorcery, there was sword and sandal. A sword and sandal, which was a very light fantasy version or fantasy take mixed in with real life historical events. That was another thing that they had going. You don't even see that anymore. So maybe it's a time right now, for sword and cowl, right? That's what we could call this: sword and cowl, sword and cape, because that is what I'm looking for. That is what I'm here talking about. That has me so excited. Now, D&D is not normally a title that reskins itself. Like you see Monopoly games and Clue games that have skins and reskins and re-reskins all over the place. It boosts their sales. It keeps the titles active, right? It makes them money. We don't really see that with Dungeons and Dragons. There was a Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons box set that came out, but that was a lark. Let's face it, nobody is really playing an ongoing Stranger Things D&D campaign. It's you played it once, you put it aside. It's not like D&D or Pathfinder or something like that where you're in it for the long haul. You're making these characters and you're playing the game for years and years, hopefully with the same character that doesn't die, building upon your past experiences. I guarantee you, nobody is playing the Stranger Things RPG, D&D game like that. It's a lark. It's a one-off thing, a two-off thing, and that's fine for what it is. But my point is that TSR never did. Wizards of the Coast doesn't. They don't reskin D&D for other things. Now, this is an opportunity, I think, for them to venture into a new field. Possibly, and this is what they want to hear, making more money. Like coming out with a Dungeons and Dragons Marvel Universe campaign setting. Yeah, the whole works. You have a DM's guide for it, a player's handbook guide for it, and you wouldn't have a monster manual now, would you? You would have the Marvel handbook in RPG form, just like they did years ago when TSR, hey, that's right. It was done successfully once before. So why not do it again? Dungeons & Dragons usually doesn't do this. But why? Is it just because of the money to buy into the franchise? I don't think so, because I see other companies buying in to publish gaming versions of the Marvel franchise left and right these days. So why don't we re-examine what TSR did years ago in the 80s when they came out with the Marvel superhero role-playing game? Now, instead of just making the role-playing game, like I've been saying, set it in a fantasy setting. Bring Avatar's Covenant of the Shield to life in a role-playing game, not just a Marvel game. How about doing this without Marvel? There's another thought. How about doing this in a sense where you are just creating your own fantasy setting for characters with superpowers? Because what is a character with a superpower, really, but a type of a wizard? Or, I guess, maybe more like a sorcerer for D&D. Or, you know what? It's more like a scion in D&D. Because unlike wizards and sorcerers who have to, do somatic and verbal components to their spells, A psionicist traditionally doesn't have to do anything. Yeah, there's some psionic prompts, like you might see the eyes glow, but they can turn it off. And that is what superheroes really are like. They're like psionicists in Dungeons and Dragons. So let's treat them that way, and let's have a goddamn superhero fantasy game. I'm all for it. What about you? What are your thoughts? Do you have any ideas about how they could successfully turn Marvel into Marvel D&D? Again, I'm not talking about the comic book as an RPG. I'm talking about taking the concept of superheroes, and in this case specifically Marvel and Avengers superheroes, and translating them into a fantasy setting. What are your thoughts on that? What would you do if you were asked to make this? What is one thing that you would make sure you would do that this game would have? All right, this is a really fun topic, and I'm waiting to hear from all of you and see what you have to say about it. I'm your buddy Big Johnny G, the Two Gun Picture presents Legendary Gaming, and I am out of here.